Hi, welcome to the Dan Bradbury podcast, where turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. In this podcast, I'll bring you resources, tips, interviews, and lots more to help to grow your business and make it less dependent on you.
Hello and welcome to the Dan Bradbury podcast. I'm Topher Morrison, guest hosting for Dan, who cannot come to his own podcast because he's waiting in line to audition for Britain's Got Talent. Nope. I'm sorry, Ed. I'm also wrong about that. He's actually just getting ready for the Ultimate Entrepreneur and his Success Mastermind coming up in Warwick, June 21st and 22nd. The Success Mastermind, of course, is his quarterly mastermind where successful business owners meet to share best practices and scale and grow their businesses. And in this particular one, why he's got the Ultimate Entrepreneur competition coming up where some very hardworking entrepreneurs are going to be competing for the title Ultimate Entrepreneur and a cash prize of £10,000. Today on this podcast, we have none other than one of those competitors. His name is Rob Stone. He is the founder of a company called Instaloft, and he competed last year. He's also in the finals this year. He's coming back better than ever, ready to go. And he has an amazing story. I was able to sit down with him earlier today and interview him about how he not just survived COVID, but thrived and actually during COVID built a second business as well. So you're going to love the interview. Here we go. Without further ado, please welcome to the program, Rob Stone. Mr. Rob Stone, welcome to the Dan Bradbury podcast. It's great to see you again because you were a finalist last year in the Ultimate Entrepreneur. You're a finalist this year. So I'm going to start off with a relatively basic question, and then we'll kind of get into the particulars about what your company is. First and foremost, what do you think you did this past 12 months that allowed you to qualify a second time as a finalist for the Ultimate Entrepreneur?
Yeah, thanks. It's nice to be here again. The last 12 months, I think, like for most businesses, has been really challenging, and we've had to look at different ways to diversify and what our opportunities are. So what I did is I looked at the business as a whole and thought, well, some of our costs, for example, might be able to be absorbed in another way. And one of those higher costs was our subcontracting to electricians, as well as our own electricians. And it's great, but we're missing an opportunity, I realised. So what I decided to do was to take the electrical work and actually separate it out completely. So I spoke to a couple of guys that were working for us as subcontractors. And I said to them, hey guys, you're doing quite well in your business. There's no two ways about that, but you've grown it on the back of my business, Instaloft. I'm thinking of bringing it all in-house and becoming an electrical company as well. Do you want to do it with me? So I had a chat with these two guys, and they basically merged their business into a new one with me, which we've called InstaSpark, and we set up a whole new business.
Great name.
So stayed with the brand so that everyone knows it. Same colour scheme, almost the same logo, but with a little spark in it. We started an electrical company which can now go out and not only do the lights and sockets that Instaloft subcontracted to, but also any other electrical work as well. And that's going really well. We started it in January and it's doing 50 grand a month and making 10 grand a month profit near enough, which is just fantastic from the standing
That's
start.
great. I would imagine also it allows you the ability to drive additional revenues, nothing to do with loft space. If they're still out there kind of doing their hustle and flow, you might be able to get some extra revenue just from general electrician work. Is that correct, or is it dedicated 100%?
That's the idea behind it. We knew that our subcontractors were growing their businesses, taking on extra work after they'd been and done the lights and sockets.
Fantastic.
We then decided it was time for us to go out and do the same thing and take the customer for ourselves.
Dude, that's great. By the way, we should probably give a little bit of background on your company for those who are tuning in to the podcast, either watching or listening to the audio version. So Instaloft, especially for the American viewers, because they may be getting a little confused. So Instaloft is, in America, that would be called Insta Attic, right? Because you help build storage attics for people above their garage or up in their attic area, but it's called a loft in the UK. So loft is a way of getting, and by the way, how instant is it? How fast can you build a loft inside somebody's garage?
Most jobs are done inside of a day. It's very rare. We get some quite large ones that can be sort of 50, 60, 70 square meters, but quite often it's just a day's work, even half a day.
Very cool. And you also have an interesting technology within your business model as well, because it's not like you're just putting boards on top of the joists. You can do that, but you also have like some kind of patented technology or unique technology, which if they've got insulation and lighting, that's not an ideal situation. So do you want to talk a little bit about like, what is that technology? Because, hey, we can get you some business. Let's get you some business at the same time, right?
Yeah, sure. And oddly enough, we're actually trying to branch into America at the moment. We're going over there later this year. So the technology we're speaking about is something called Loft Zone, which is a raised floor system designed to protect any loft insulation, any pipework, any electrical wiring, and it raises the floor depending on which type you use. We've got two different sorts now, but raises it between 15 and 30 centimeters off the joist level, which allows you to insulate it, allows all the pipes to run underneath without being damaged, so that if you're walking across there or you're storing your things, you can do it safely. You're not going to trip over, you're not going to damage the electrics, you're not going to damage the pipe work. It just makes it a much smoother space to work in.
All right. So now let's talk a little bit about I mean, you have a business which is it literally cannot be done 100% remotely, essentially, right? So when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden you're faced with, are we considered an essential worker? Probably not. It'll be interesting to see what the classification came from. And you would have to do on-site inspections and go out and do all of the measurements. And there had to be a way in which you could pivot and change. So this is kind of a two-part question. Part one, going back to when the pandemic hit, how did you pivot, right? Because I think a lot of people were faced with this notion of, I've been doing business this way my whole career. Now the pandemic is coming along and I've got two options: crawl up into a ball and cry, or pivot and find a new way to do things. And I would have to say probably a lesser business person would have rolled up in a ball and cried in your industry, but you found some pretty cool solutions to continue to plug on as best you can.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that. And then what we'll do after that is we'll talk a little bit about, now that we've hit the endemic phase of the pandemic, how are you going back and what lessons are you bringing into the future from pandemic era? But let's just start with, what did you do? And maybe even not so much the content, but the context, like what was going on in your head, and how did you stay resourceful and proactive and stay ahead of the game versus just kind of being determined by what the pandemic was doing?
Yeah, it was shocking because we're 6 months into what appeared to be our best year ever, and then suddenly we were all told to go home, like everyone was. And so, that the day it happened, 23rd of March, we said to everyone, well, that's the end of this for the time being. We'll be in touch as soon as we can. But we decided we had some customers that needed some work finished off. They were insistent that they didn't want to wait. So we kept a couple of guys on, going out, and we quickly developed what I called at the time COVID-safe procedures. It became a term a lot of places used. And this was a case of going to a house, making sure you're wearing masks, making sure you've got sanitizer on you, sanitizer spray for cleaning, before and afterwards. And after probably 4 or 5 weeks, we brought a few more guys back, just to say, look, let's go and try and do this. But of course, that's great while we had work booked in, but we still need to generate more work. It doesn't last forever. So as we had guys coming in on their vans and going out as one guy on a van rather than two, so it's taking them 2 days maybe to do a job rather than one, we had them, the sales guys, start making calls to their customers that were still inquiring, and just doing calls over video. So they were saying to the customers, look, you've got to get your tape measure. When we call you, you need to have your tape measure handy. We'll guide you through how to do the measurements, what we need to look at, and we'll talk to you about all the various different options. We'll show you some photographs through screen shares where we could. So some of the guys were doing Zoom, some were doing FaceTime calls and WhatsApp calls, these sort of things. That was really successful. The customers really appreciated the fact that we were making the effort to still service them, to still do quotes for them. And we found that,
by the way, I mean, jump in real quick. That's pretty impressive that you could even pull off doing video instruction for something which is, honestly, it's pretty technical, right? There's tons of different angles, and so did you come into any logistical challenges, like when you brought the kit out to build the loft? Was there any kind of like on-site adjustments that you had to make in order to, like, the client screwed up this measurement, we're an inch too short or we're 2 inches too long? Did you have to do some mods as well?
We did. So we found that customers just didn't give you the right measurements. They couldn't really take measure as well as one of our technical guys might do. So we're going to houses and finding a lot of things weren't quite as planned. So very quickly we had to change our terms and conditions and make it part of our pre-calls almost, that look, based on the measurements you've given us, this is what we're going to quote for you, this is what we're going to do. However, when we come to the house, we might find we've got to make some changes, and we adapted fairly quickly in taking alternative either hatches, or loft hatches as we call them, or loft ladders, so that if the one they measured for and we selected for them wasn't going to fit, we could change that, while we're there.
Be a pivot inside a pivot, then, right? Like you made your first pivot, and you're like, oh, now we got to pivot again and make some contract adjustments. All right, now we're at the endemic, right? I don't want to speak too soon. Knock on wood. We're at the endemic phase, and we're starting to come out of that now. Life is starting to return to normal. The restrictions are being lifted. What are you going to go back to how it was in the very beginning, or are you starting to realize, wow, you know what, we could actually still cut our margins and save some points here if we continue to do the remote measurements or things like that? Are you giving them options? What lessons are you bringing forward into the future, if any?
Yeah, so I've got two companies. One of the garage company, we carry on doing what we're calling virtual design presentations, and we do know for customers that are out of area. So if they're too far away for us to easily go and see them, we'll do that. With the attic loft business, we're going back to the normal ways of doing things because it's more personable to be there in person, explaining it, showing the samples and all those sort of things. And the feedback we've had is that that's what the customers want us to do. And you don't argue with the customers. They tend to be right, not always, but they can be for things like this.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to first off, the Ultimate Entrepreneur Competition coming up June 21st and 22nd. People can go and they can not just attend the competition, but be a part of the mastermind, which is all about this. This theme is going to be about scaling and growing your businesses. What will you be sharing during your presentation that will allow people to, in some way, hopefully replicate some of the success and the results that you've done? And we should probably actually talk a little bit about numbers here as well, so we can kind of get an idea or perspective of what you've done, because it's not like your sales plummeted during the pandemic. You were 6 months into having your best year ever, but you still finished the year breaking some records, if I'm not mistaken. You might be able to correct me on that one, but let's talk about what. The thought process as an entrepreneur, and how did you stay ahead of that, and what was your thinking like, and what will you share with the audience that will allow them to replicate your results?
Yeah, I think for me it's about looking at the synergies within your business and what opportunities there are. Certainly we had to. We as you said, we hit some record figures. We did £14 million in revenue that year. Which
Say that again. How much?
I said we did 14 million in revenue. Which is in pounds, which is absolutely incredible. But we also knew that we dipped out. We lost a lot. We lost a month and a half's work while we were in the lockdown at the beginning. And we wanted to look at ways to diversify our risk, I guess, as well as our opportunity. And that's when we looked at a company called Garage Flex that came up for sale, which again is about storage, but it's in the garage of a home. So we bought that. That was an acquisition. Which allowed us to not only have additional revenue streams from the business that was going already, but to cross-market between the two different customer types for, the garage customers being offered lofts and the loft customers being offered garages. So that was a great pivotal moment. There's early days in that yet, so there's a lot of work to do on that acquisition. And then, as I mentioned before, the electrical opportunity, which could, if it goes the way we're planning it to, will be equally as big as Instaloft. We're acting on the Instaloft structure, so we've got 6 depots. We've now got electricians in every single depot around the country. So suddenly we're arguably a national or a semi-national electrical business, and we're now advertising for more electricians to take on the work because we're trying to really push that extra work. And as I say, that's
so pre-pandemic, you have Instaloft, one company. Post-pandemic, you have now 3 companies, essentially, right? You can do not just loft, but garages and also the electrical. Dude, that is incredible determination and innovation, and your ability to pivot is inspiring as hell. Listen, I met you last year, and I was just blown away by your story. First off, you're funny AF. I loved your presentation. You have one of the more entertaining ones. You have this kind of humbleness about you, but it's almost like this Forrest Gump humbleness where you just kind of like, yeah, well, this is what we did, and this is what we did, and this we did, and you make it sound so casual, but it's like really impressive what you've done. Honestly, for those of you who are listening or watching this podcast, it's worth coming to the program just to meet Rob and just hear more about his detail and his story. It really is inspiring. I loved hearing you last year. You're coming back strong this year with even more success as well. It's going to be June 21st and June 22nd. You do have tight competition, though. I've seen the other people, so
Yes.
you got some tight competition, but you're going to do great. If people want to learn more about your companies, they can go to instaloft.co.uk. That's instaloft.co.uk. We'll put that website up on the screen as well. So you can check out Rob, learn a little bit more about the lofts. I would assume if they go to instaloft.co.uk. By the way, let me be real quick here. It's instaloft.co.uk, not plural. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Just want to make sure I say it the correct way there because I think I sloppily said Instaloft stuff. It's instaloft.co.uk. And if they go there, will there be connections and links to also instaspark.co.uk as well, or is that completely separate?
At the moment, they're separate. Just while we get the websites rebuilt for the other two companies, they're certainly on our media. All of our quotes, our emails, and our communication with customers, we cross-link it, but I don't expect everyone to ask me for a quote.
Yeah. All right. And by the way, did I assume correctly that the new website is then instaspark.co.uk?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Oh, man. Intuitive genius right here. Intuitive genius. All right. So instaloft.co.uk, instaspark.co.uk for those people who might have some loft or electrician needs. Rob, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I can't wait to see you June 21st and 22nd. Hear more about your story. Best of luck to you in the Ultimate Entrepreneur competition coming up in June. Take care, my friend.
Thank you. Really good seeing you again.
All right, there you have it, Rob Stone from Instaloft and InstaSpark. Now, if you'd like to meet Rob and the other competitors, you can do so in work June 21st and 22nd at Dan Bradbury's Success Mastermind. Now, not only do we have the Success Mastermind and the Ultimate Entrepreneur competition happening inside, we have two special guests coming in. We have Nigel Shanahan and Simon Inchley. Nigel grew and successfully exited his company for a high eight-figure sum, by the way. You're going to want to hear about how he did that. And then we have Simon, who is the founder of Gresham LLP. They were a private equity firm. He was responsible for over $750 million in assets and successfully exited also for a high eight-figure sum. So you're going to want to come sharpen your pencils, learn on how these two unbelievable entrepreneurs did that, and also get some great inspiration and stories from the Success Mastermind and the Ultimate Entrepreneur Competition coming up June 21st and 22nd. I'll see you there. Until then, let's all try a little harder to be a little better.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 steps to improving your profits and cash flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.